Hey there, you looking kinda cute. Don't forget to subscribe and check out my other socials for more. Enjoy. Marie stood at the bar, her keen eyes scanning the room as her students moved through their routine. The gentle piano music filled the air, accompanying the graceful movements of the dancers. And 1, 2, 3, Marie counted, her voice carrying over the melody. She watched as lithe figures pirouetted and leapt, their bodies moving in perfect synchronization. Suddenly, a sharp cry pierced the air. Marie's head snapped towards the source of the sound. Olivia, one of her lead dancers, crumpled to the floor, clutching her ankle. "Stop the music!" Marie called out, rushing to Olivia's side. The other dancers gathered around, concern etched on their faces. Marie knelt beside Olivia, gently examining her ankle. "What happened?" Olivia's face was contorted with pain. I think I landed wrong. It hurts so much." Marie's heart sank. The opening night of their production was just a week away, and Olivia was set to dance the lead role. This injury could jeopardize everything they had worked so hard for. "Can you stand?" Marie asked, offering her hand to Olivia. With Marie's help, Olivia attempted to put weight on her foot, but immediately winced and shook her head. "I'm sorry, I can't." Marie turned to the other dancers. "Class dismissed for today. Please, practice your routines at home. We'll reassess tomorrow." As the dancers filed out of the studio, whispering among themselves, Marie helped Olivia to a chair. "We need to get you to a doctor. Let's not jump to conclusions until we know the extent of the injury." But as Marie called for a taxi and accompanied Olivia to the hospital, she couldn't shake the feeling of dread that settled in her stomach. Years of experience told her that this injury was serious, and with opening night looming, she had no idea how they would manage. The doctor's diagnosis confirmed her fears. Olivia had suffered a severe sprain that would take weeks to heal properly. There was no way she could dance in the upcoming performance. Marie sat in her office late into the night, poring over the list of potential replacements. None of the understudies were prepared to take on such a demanding role on such short notice. She rubbed her temples, feeling the weight of responsibility pressing down on her. As she leaned back in her chair, her eyes fell on a framed photograph on her desk. It showed a young man in dance attire, mid-leap, his form perfect and his expression one of pure joy. Philip, her son. Marie's mind raced. Philip had been a prodigy, training since childhood and showing immense promise. But he had quit dancing years ago, succumbing to the peer pressure and societal expectations that often plagued male ballet dancers. She picked up her phone, her fingers hovering over Philip's number. It was a long shot, but she was out of options. The phone rang several times before Philip's groggy voice answered. "Mom, it's late. Is everything okay?" Marie took a deep breath. "Philip, I need your help. It's about the ballet." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Mom, we've talked about this. I don't dance anymore." I know, Marie said quickly. "But we're in a crisis. Olivia's injured, and we have no one to take her place for opening night. You're the only one who knows the choreography well enough to step in." Philip sighed. "Mom, even if I wanted to, I can't. It's a female role. I can't just—" Marie cut him off. "We can make it work. With the right costume and makeup, no one would know. Please, Philip, I wouldn't ask if I had any other choice." The silence stretched on, and Marie held her breath. Finally, Philip spoke. "I'll think about it, but I'm not promising anything." Relief washed over Marie. It wasn't a yes, but it wasn't a no either. "Thank you, Philip. That's all I ask." The next morning, Marie arrived at the studio early. She had barely slept, her mind racing with possibilities and potential solutions. As she unlocked the door, she was surprised to see Philip waiting for her, a duffel bag slung over his shoulder. "Philip," she exclaimed, "I didn't expect to see you here." He shrugged, a hint of a smile on his face. "I couldn't sleep. Kept thinking about what you said. I'm not saying I'll do it, but I want to see if it's even possible." Marie's heart soared. She ushered him into the studio, locking the door behind them to ensure privacy. "Thank you for considering this, Philip. I know it's a lot to ask." They spent the next few hours going over the choreography. Despite the years away from ballet, Philip's muscle memory kicked in, and he moved through the steps with surprising grace and fluidity. "You haven't lost your touch," Marie remarked, watching him complete a particularly difficult sequence. Philip wiped sweat from his brow. "It's coming back to me. But Mom, even if I can dance the part, how are we going to disguise, well, me?" Marie had been pondering this very question all night. "I have some ideas." We'll need to be creative with costuming and makeup. And you'll need to work on your mannerisms, your gait. It's not just about the dance itself." Philip nodded, a determined look in his eyes. "All right. If we're going to do this, let's do it right." Over the next few days, Philip threw himself into preparation. He practiced for hours, refining his technique and relearning the intricacies of On Point. Marie brought in a trusted costume designer and makeup artist, sworn to secrecy, to work on Philip's transformation. The costume was redesigned to accommodate Philip's broader shoulders and more muscular frame. Clever padding and a corset created the illusion of a feminine silhouette. Hours were spent perfecting makeup techniques to soften Philip's features and create the illusion of delicate bone structure. Philip also worked with a voice coach, learning to speak in a higher register and adopt more traditionally feminine mannerisms. It was exhausting, physically and mentally demanding work, but Philip found himself enjoying the challenge. As the days passed, Marie watched her son's transformation with a mixture of pride and amazement. The young man who had walked away from ballet years ago was rediscovering his passion, pushing himself to new limits. The night before the dress rehearsal, Marie found Philip alone in the studio, going through his routine one last time. She stood in the doorway, watching silently as he moved across the floor, his movements fluid and graceful. As the imaginary music in Philip's head reached its crescendo, he executed a perfect grand jeté, landing softly and holding the final pose. Marie couldn't help but applaud. Philip turned, startled. "Mom, I didn't hear you come in." Marie walked over to him, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "You were magnificent, Philip. Truly." He ducked his head, a faint blush coloring his cheeks. "Thanks, Mom. I just hope it's enough." She reached out, squeezing his shoulder. "It's more than enough. You've worked so hard, and it shows. I'm so proud of you." Philip smiled, then his expression grew serious. "Mom, I need to ask you something. Why did you really ask me to do this? You could have canceled the show or found another solution." Marie was quiet for a moment, considering her words carefully. "Partly it was because I knew you could do it. You have the talent and the training. But more than that, I hoped it might rekindle your love for ballet. I've always regretted not fighting harder when you decided to quit." Philip's expression softened. "Mom, that wasn't your fault. I made that decision." "I know," Marie said, "but I saw how much it hurt you to walk away. I thought maybe if you got back on that stage, you might remember why you loved it in the first place." Philip was quiet for a long moment. Then he pulled his mother into a tight hug. "Thank you," he whispered. The next day, the dress rehearsal arrived. The other dancers had been told that a last-minute replacement had been found, but they were unprepared for the vision that greeted them when Olivia took the stage. Philip, fully transformed, moved with a grace and poise that left the company breathless. His years of training shone through in every movement, every gesture perfectly executed. As the final notes of the music faded away, there was a moment of stunned silence before the studio erupted in applause. Marie beamed with pride, watching as the other dancers crowded around Philip, showering him with praise and questions about where he had trained. Philip fielded the questions with a quiet grace, his voice soft and melodious. Marie marveled at his composure, knowing the nerves he must be feeling beneath the calm exterior. The day of the performance arrived in a flurry of activity. The theater buzzed with excitement, stagehands rushing to make last-minute adjustments while dancers warmed up in every available space. In a private dressing room, Philip sat before a mirror, watching as the makeup artist worked her magic. With each brush stroke, Philip disappeared, replaced by the delicate features of a ballerina. Marie knocked softly before entering. "How are you feeling?" Philip met her eyes in the mirror. "Nervous, excited, terrified. Is that normal?" Marie laughed. "Perfectly normal. It means you care." As the makeup artist put the finishing touches on Philip's transformation, Marie helped him into his costume. The rustle of tulle and the glint of sequins filled the air as they worked in companionable silence. Finally, Philip stood before the full-length mirror, barely recognizing himself. The person staring back at him was undeniably feminine, from the perfectly coiffed hair to the delicate arch of the feet in pink point shoes. "You look beautiful," Marie said softly, standing behind him. Philip took a deep breath, squaring his shoulders. "Let's do this." As they made their way to the wings, they could hear the murmur of the audience beyond the curtain. The rest of the company was already in place, stretching and whispering words of encouragement to each other. Marie gave Philip's hand a final squeeze before taking her place in the wings. "Remember, you were born for this. Trust your training, trust your body. You're going to be amazing." The lights dimmed and a hush fell over the theater. The first strains of music filled the air and the curtain rose. Philip took a deep breath and stepped onto the stage. From the moment his feet touched the boards, something magical happened. All the nerves, all the doubts melted away. Philip wasn't just dancing, he was flying, soaring across the stage with a grace and passion that took his breath away. Every pirouette, every leap was executed with perfect precision. Philip lost himself in the music, in the story they were telling through dance. He forgot about the audience, forgot about the deception. In that moment, he was simply a dancer, doing what he was born to do. As the final notes of music faded away, Philip struck his final pose, chest heaving with exertion. For a heartbeat, there was silence. Then the theater erupted in thunderous applause. Flowers rained down on the stage as the audience rose to their feet in a standing ovation. Philip's castmates crowded around him, hugging him and offering their congratulations. As they took their final bows, Philip's eyes found his mother in the wings. Marie was beaming, tears streaming down her face as she applauded with the rest of the audience. In that moment, Philip knew. This wasn't just a one-time thing, a favor for his mother. This was where he belonged. On the stage, under the lights, telling stories through the language of dance. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of performances, each one met with the same enthusiasm as opening night. Critics raved about the new star of the ballet world, praising the technical skill and emotional depth of the performances. Philip continued his charade, appearing in public as his alter ego, giving interviews and attending events. It was exhausting, but exhilarating. As the final performance of the run approached, Philip knew a decision had to be made. He couldn't continue this double life forever, but the thought of giving up dance again was unbearable. The night before the last show, Philip sat with Marie in her office, both of them nursing cups of tea. "What am I going to do, Mom?" Philip asked, his voice heavy with conflicting emotions. Marie reached across the desk, taking his hand. "What do you want to do, Philip? Not what you think you should do or what others expect. What does your heart tell you?" Philip was quiet for a long moment, staring into his tea as if it held the answers. Finally, he looked up, meeting his mother's gaze. "I want to dance. I don't want to hide anymore, but I don't want to give this up either." Marie nodded, a small smile playing at her lips. "Then that's what you'll do. It won't be easy. There will be questions, criticism, perhaps. But you have talent, Philip. Real, undeniable talent. And in the end, that's what matters in this world." Philip squeezed her hand. "Thank you, Mom. For everything. For believing in me, for giving me this chance." The next night, as the final curtain fell, Philip made his decision. He stepped forward, still in costume, and addressed the audience. "Thank you all for your incredible support throughout this run," he began, his voice clear and strong. "I have a confession to make. My name is not Olivia. I'm Philip, and I've been dancing this role in disguise." A murmur of surprise rippled through the audience. Philip continued, "I stepped in when the original lead was injured, and in doing so, I rediscovered my love for ballet. I know this may come as a shock, but I hope you can understand and accept me for who I am, simply a dancer who loves his art." For a moment, there was silence. Then, slowly, applause began to build. It grew louder and louder until the theater was once again filled with the sound of a standing ovation. As Philip stood there, tears in his eyes, he felt a weight lift from his shoulders. He was free to be himself, free to dance, free to follow his passion without fear or shame. In the wings, Marie watched with pride as her son took his final bow, not as a disguised ballerina, but as himself, Philip, the dancer who had found his way back to the stage. The journey ahead would not be easy. There would be challenges, questions to answer, prejudices to overcome. But as Philip stood there, basking in the warmth of acceptance from the audience, he knew that with his mother's support and his own determination, he could face whatever came next. For now, he reveled in the joy of the moment, in the knowledge that he had rediscovered his true self. The music of the ballet still echoed in his ears and in his heart. He knew that this was just the beginning of a new and exciting chapter in his life. As the curtain fell for the last time, Philip turned to his fellow dancers, who were looking at him with a mixture of shock and admiration. He took a deep breath, ready to face whatever questions or reactions might come. To his surprise, the first person to approach him was the company's principal dancer, a stern woman named Natalia, who had always intimidated Philip. "You danced beautifully," she said, her voice softer than he had ever heard it. "Man or woman, it doesn't matter. You have a gift, Philip. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." Her words opened the floodgates, and soon Philip was surrounded by his castmates, all offering words of support and encouragement. There were questions, of course, but they were asked with genuine curiosity rather than judgment. As the crowd around him thinned, Philip caught sight of his mother standing at the edge of the stage. He made his way to her, suddenly feeling like a little boy again, seeking his mother's approval. Marie pulled him into a fierce hug. "I'm so proud of you," she whispered. "You were magnificent, Philip. Not just your dancing, but your courage. You've always been my star, but now the whole world can see it too." Philip held on to his mother, letting her words wash over him. For so long he had been afraid of judgment, afraid of not fitting in, afraid of his own passion. But standing there, in the aftermath of his revelation, he felt nothing but relief and a sense of coming home. The next few weeks were a blur of interviews and meetings. The story of the male dancer who had successfully performed a female role captivated the media and the dance world alike. Philip found himself thrust into the spotlight, but this time he embraced it. He spoke openly about his journey, about the pressures that had led him to quit dancing years ago, and about rediscovering his love for ballet. His honesty and passion resonated with people, and he began to receive messages from young dancers all over the world who saw themselves in his story. The ballet company, recognizing the unique opportunity Philip presented, began to work on a new production, one that would challenge traditional gender roles in dance and showcase Philip's talents. As Philip threw himself into rehearsals for this new show, he felt a sense of purpose he had never experienced before. He wasn't just dancing for himself anymore. He was dancing for every person who had ever felt out of place, for every artist who had been told they didn't fit the mold. Months passed, and opening night of the new production arrived. As Philip stood in the wings, waiting for his cue, he thought back to that night when his mother had called him, desperate for help. He had been reluctant, afraid, unsure. Now he couldn't imagine his life any other way. The music swelled, and Philip stepped onto the stage. As he began to dance, he felt the familiar rush of joy, the sensation of his body moving in perfect harmony with the music. But there was something else, too, a sense of freedom, of finally being true to himself. As he soared across the stage, Philip knew that this was more than just a performance. It was a statement, a challenge to the world to see beyond gender, beyond expectations, and recognize the artistry that lay within every individual. The audience watched in awe as Philip danced, his movements a perfect blend of strength and grace. In that moment, he wasn't a male dancer or a female dancer, he was simply an artist, expressing himself through the universal language of dance. As the final notes faded away and Philip struck his ending pose, the theater erupted in applause. Flowers rained down on the stage, and the audience rose as one in a standing ovation that seemed to go on forever. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to check out my other socials if you want more wonderful content, early access, behind the scenes, and more. All links down below.